So, guys, welcome back. It is Thomas and I again. This is going to be episode 2 of our tutorial series together.
For the second time.
For the second time. Now, I do have this footage still, but I'd rather reshoot it.
Why not?
Today we're going to show you airbrushing. So, we're not going to use this airbrush. This is an airbrush I have not dealt with yet. And I think this is maybe a little advanced for some people. This is a Sotar 2020. It's an incredibly fine detail brush. We're going to talk about the basics of airbrushing. We're going to talk about how to clean your airbrush. We're going to talk about how to swap colors in your airbrush. The idea is I'm going to let Thomas pretty much take over this episode. I'm going to give you guys a few simple explanations of things. And Thomas is just going to start spraying. We're going to do some B-roll type stuff. And then we're just going to come to the end and talk about it. So, see you guys in a little bit. Okay guys, so what we've got here is pretty much your standard top feed dual action airbrush. This is the Sotar 2020. Most of your dual action airbrushes are going to have some minor differences between them, but ultimately it's going to be something like this. You're going to have a cup at the top to feed your paint into. You're going to have a plunger that you press down. That's going to control your airflow. It's generally on or off. If you kind of push it a little bit, sometimes you can kind of regulate the air, but it's kind of preferred or recommended that you just press it all the way down. And then you can pull back and it'll rock back and forth to adjust paint flow. Now, the way the airbrush typically works is your paint is going to sit here, your air is going to come through the bottom, and then those two are going to meet, shoot out the front. This is with a gravity-fed airbrush. Sometimes you might see one that has like a cup on the side. Those work kind of similarly. The paint will kind of flow into the side and out the airbrush. Those are a little cleaner as far as maintaining and cleaning out the actual paint area is concerned, because it's all separate. And then there's sometimes you'll see one that's got a cup attached to the bottom. Those are easy for swapping out paints. You just put a little thinner on it, shoot it for a second, take the thinner off, put some paint on it, and you're good to go for your next color. Again, the type of airbrush doesn't really matter. The only real important thing for me is I like a dual action airbrush. So dual action means that you can press down and you can pull back. Single action airbrushes don't allow you to do that. I believe that they just have a constant airflow and you just adjust the paint. I could be wrong about that. I've never used one. But I like being in control of every aspect of what I'm doing. Now, painting itself is pretty straightforward. Any painting that I'm going to be doing for Gunpla is going to be somewhere in the realm of between, I'd say, 8 and 20 PSI. Sometimes I might go up to like a 25 for top coating, but ultimately I'm not going to spray too far outside of that realm. We're going to keep the pressure pretty low. We like to spray pretty thin. We're going to do multiple coats on each part. And what you're going to do is you're going to make multiple passes. You're gonna lay down a line of paint. You're going to come down just a little bit. And you're going to halfway overlap that next layer, and then halfway overlap that next layer. That way you're slowly building opacity as you go. You don't want to full blast the whole piece in one go, because you're just going to get a big globby mess. It's going to be a nightmare. Now, when it comes to changing colors in the paint cup, it's really just a matter of putting some. You want to make sure that there's not a lot of paint in the bottom of the cup anyway. If there's a ton of excess, pour it back into your jar or into a new jar if it's a custom mixed color. But you want almost nothing in there. You spray a little thinner in there, preferably the medium that you're using. If you're spraying acrylics, you'll want either an airbrush cleaner or an acrylic thinner. And then you will do what is called a backwash. You'll pinch the tip of the airbrush, you'll let the air go, and you'll pull back just a little bit. You'll get some bubbles going inside there, and it'll kind of knock any little residue loose from the needle. From there, you want to spray a bunch out, and then I like to dump, if there's a bunch of excess, I'll dump it out. And then I'll do another round of that just to make sure that there's no little bits of pigment left down at the bottom. For cleaning the airbrush, I'll do the same thing, except I will then go back after that's all done. Once you spray, and it only sprays thinner that's clear, I will run a lacquer thinner through here just to make sure that there's nothing left in the cup or in the nozzle at all.
Paint me like one of your French models.
After all the painting is done, you know, you can turn your compressor off, you bleed the lines, and you're good to go. But painting is pretty straightforward. Like Thomas said earlier, this is our second take on this video, but that isn't going to change the results too much. Thomas is not really a professional, but he grasped the concept pretty easily just through me explaining it. So we're going to go ahead, like I said, we're going to take some shots at Thomas, and we're going to see how things look. There you have it. We tried to keep explanation to kind of a minimum, and that was intentional. Normally, when it comes to painting, once you kind of figure out your settings, once you kind of figure out some of the etiquette, I guess, some of the things that you're supposed to do, you learn, you know, spray this far away, lay down the thin coats. Once you kind of get into the swing of those practices, everything else just kind of comes secondary. So Thomas, how do you think it went your first time painting?
I think it went relatively well. There's some things I could have improved on, like distance and spraying heavy and whatnot, but that comes with time. The movement was what came to me the most naturally, and I mean overall I'm really proud of it.
Well, that's what matters the most, is it's something that's going to go on your shelf, and it's something that nobody else, even if someone painted in the exact same colors that we used, yours is going to be different than theirs.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the cool things about painting. So Like I said, Thomas wanted to do a custom project in the future. I didn't want Thomas to try to do a custom project and not really jump into it blindly. So that's kind of what inspired this series up to this point. We're not done yet though. Now, I don't try to push too hard, but I figure if we're gonna go ahead with this series, we're gonna push it all the way. So the next thing we're gonna touch on in the next episode, we're gonna talk about panel lining. We're gonna talk about decals. We're gonna talk about final top coat. We're gonna talk about just a couple little things. And again, I'm gonna do it the same way. I might do a little demonstration, and then I'm gonna let Thomas run with the episode. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'll put links to Thomas's social media down below. You can follow him. And big shout out to my patrons. We got Andy, Gil, Gio, Rex, SD, and Nick. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys for watching if you watched this far in the video.